That is so interesting to think about. Yeah, it's like that you could accept money from others, but ultimately think like they're not doing it correctly or they're not doing it the right way. I was told that all the time that like, marriage is
you were
built
told
on
you weren't
Christ.
doing it the right way all the time.
Yeah, I was just, everything I did was wrong. Stop doing it.
Scott, you're not doing that the right way. Dearly beloved, welcome to the Unblessed Podcast, where we inquire and exposit the mysteries of that ancient text, that good book itself, the Holy Bible. We are not theologians nor historians. We are but armchair philosophers who spent years in seminary or on a church staff and have since departed to make our own way. We invite you now to read, think, and laugh with us as we dive deep into the denominational doctrines of the divine in the Unblessed Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unblessed Podcast. My name is Evan.
And I'm Scott.
And we are 2X Relevant subscribers. Scott, did you ever subscribe to Relevant Magazine?
I never subscribed, but I...
All right, so we are 1X Relevant subscriber and somebody who wished they did.
I like bought a couple, and I feel like I got gifted like a Relevant subscription for a year or something, because I got like a magazine every month for a while, and then
all right, so we were one Relevant subscriber and one Relevant Nepo baby.
Yes. What's relevant for everybody listening?
What is relevant?
What is relevant? Are we
like Taylor
relevant?
Swift?
Probably not.
Travis Kelce, Post Malone's cover of Hootie and the Blowfish. That's relevant. Beyonce's country song.
Yeah, let's see what else is relevant.
The Bears and Justin Fields. That's relevant.
Let's see. Like
what we're talking about is pop culture.
Yeah.
And Relevant Magazine was a Christian magazine, a very seeker-sensitive Christian magazine.
I like that term.
Yeah, seeker-sensitive means okay for... Like an atheist might be okay opening it up. Like it didn't immediately seem super Christian, though it had like Christian articles in it and articles about theology and religion. And in many ways, like Relevant Magazine, I always thought was fine. It was where I learned that Mumford and Sons, like Marcus Mumford was like the son of like
God.
Where he was the son of God. True. Where he was the son of this like Episcopalian minister or whatever over in Ireland, or Northern Ireland or wherever. I don't know. That won't do well in the UK for me to mix up Ireland.
Sorry, Ireland. Wherever you're from, Wales or Scotland, it's all the same.
In fairness, I didn't get those mixed up. I got where Marcus Mumford was from mixed up. I feel like I'm safe.
All our Irish listeners, Evan lives now in Ohio. You can find him at...
Find me in Cincinnati.
Oh, man.
You know a city that's better than any city you have?
That's right. Any other city.
Our
Relevant
soccer
magazine,
team's
though.
better than your football team.
For Relevant, I just remember getting hooked on like... They had a lot of music articles. Like they had a lot of bands that they would interview, or like they'd have like a breakdown of like, here's some like albums coming out from like the actual artists you want to listen to. Because what I liked about Relevant is they would push and promote the Christian artists that were not just like the worship team. It wasn't just like
that were kind
Chris
of like
Tomlin.
on the edges.
Yeah,
that's how I found out about Michael Gungor. I found out about Sufjan Stevens. Soup Jam Stevens.
Soup Jam Stevens.
Yep. And I remember I was just like, oh, people say he's really good. I'm going to try and listen to him. And I tried to listen to him, and I was like,
okay, that's enough.
This is very repetitive, all of it. And I see where it's talented, and I see where somebody might like it, but boy, is this not for me. Anyway,
that says enough of a review when you say someone else might like this. I think that says enough about how you feel.
Oh, man. I would be the worst critic of anything, of just like 5 stars. Good for someone else, probably, not for me. Evan, why'd you give it
5 out of 5
stars?
for somebody else.
Well, I didn't want to be mean.
To be fair, this is going to probably be an anti-Sufjan Stevens podcast because I never really grooved with him either. I didn't get the hype, but come at us, everybody. Let us know how you feel about Sufjan Stevens.
No, fight me. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and my banjo music is better than your banjo music.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other artists I remember from Relevant.
I remember they did a big op-ed on Lecrae.
Oh my gosh, I do remember they would be pushing and promoting Lecrae. That would God.
Show Baraka was on there as well.
Remember. I think I heard from King's Kaleidoscope before, but I know they covered them a lot on their website.
Got birthed out of Mars Hill, didn't they? The whole Mark Driscoll. For those of you who don't know, whenever we mention Mars Hill, like it's a very it started out in I think Washington or Seattle or wherever, and it became a church planting network in and on its own, and it had a lot of good worship. Its worship music was not just basic worship music.
No, it was phenomenal. Yeah,
it was good music. Sometimes it was even bluesy, which was really fun. There was just there's a little bit of grit to it that you didn't get with the Chris Tomlins and the Christian Stanfills and the Bethel.
Well, yeah, what I always liked is that they had a lot of musicianship and it wasn't just we're going to make this as simple and as repeatable as possible, because that's what you have to do with worship music is when you want it to be put in churches across America, you got to make it very easy to pick up. The lyrics can't be I should say the melodies can't be too complicated, and the instrumentation can't have too many parts. That's why it's just it needs an acoustic and a bass and maybe some drums, and that's all you need.
They really hit people like me for people like me and you, but for different reasons. I think one was the musicianship, where it was all right, well, if we're gonna play music, let's make it good. And then the other side of it is, instead of just people singing the same melodies, let's have people scream them. Yeah, they're not gonna hit these high notes, but if they can just try, it sounds everybody screaming together in the same note is going to sound good. Yeah. If they're not mic'd, your congregation is going to still sound pretty damn involved. Yeah. But yeah, so Relevant was always fun was always really good as far as getting into pop culture. Mm-hmm. And Relevant put out an article regarding, we haven't talked about him in a while. Brian Houston from Hillsong.
He's back. He's back with a vengeance.
He never got in trouble for his dad's child sex ring. That never happened. But Brian Houston on February 20th put out on Twitter, "Ladies and girls kissing." Those words in that order.
Just 4 words. That's it. Just ladies and girls kissing.
And girls kissing.
What time did he post that in Australian Eastern Time, by the way?
Australian Eastern Time? Is that what it's called?
It really is Australian Eastern Time. Is it really called Australian Eastern Time? Not everything is America time, Evan.
I'm the most ignorant person on the face of the earth.
Do you think other countries, everyone else is on Eastern once they get past New York City? It's we're all on Eastern.
No, soon it was just Australian time. Every country has its own time.
It was 11:41 p.m. their time. So
wife was asleep and he was rolled over. He was late at night, quote unquote, sermon prepping.
I eat this kind of stuff up. I love when specifically conservatives, but especially Christian conservatives, mess up on the internet. I love it. It gives me so much joy. And then the best part is So he posted that ladies and girls kissing tweet at 11:41, and then at 57, so 16 minutes later, he made a post. I think my Twitter may have been hacked. 16 minutes later.
God, what a dingus. It said like by then the floodgates had opened up. One person tweeted, or at Moistened Tart tweeted, "Good save, Brian. This one hasn't ever been used before, ever."
Yeah. Good save, Brian.
At Scotty Van 68V2, "Don't mix your Twitter with Google searches."
Oh my God.
And then another person put up, "I'm watching you," with like the Jesus symbol.
Yeah. His assistant, I think the next day, also made a tweet, and I'll just read this real quick. She said, "Thank you for your concern. Pastor Brian's assistant here. Rest assured, we are working on discovering how Pastor Brian's Twitter was hacked. Our team has ascertained that someone logged into his account from a location within the USA." So I love how they use a strong verb, ascertained, like they really tracked it down.
But it gives you the idea that they apprehended the person.
Yeah.
But really what they did was they like thought about it and then decided that was what happened.
Yeah. "We've changed his password, so here's hoping they no longer have access."
Password 2.
Well, that's how password resets work, Yolanda.
God damn. I think my favorite iteration of an article on this is from Pedestrian. Oh. Yeah, just Pedestrian, the Pedestrian website, Pedestrian TV. Said, "The great author Ernest Hemingway famously challenged himself to come up with a story that only consisted of 6 words. Yet this post from Brian Houston's account has blown Hemingway's record out of the water by effectively telling a much more thought-provoking and intriguing story in 2 less words." Because the tweet posted so many questions, such as, "What is Brian Houston doing?"
What is Brian Houston doing? I just can't. I was talking to him about right before this it would be less funny if it was a more explicit search. I don't know what it is, but like
ladies and girls kissing there's so many
dry.
levels to it. I also don't like that it's different types of women.
I don't like that either. I really that's kind of weird.
This is men and boys kissing, but female. Like that's the vibe it's giving.
Like he could have just said, I know this is the exact podcast material everyone's looking for, but he could have just said ladies kissing. He could have said anything else, but he said ladies
kissing
and girls.
each other. Yeah,
ladies kissing each other. Yeah, and girls is what gets me. It's creepy. It's weird. But it's also like, that's like a search from somebody where they know there's like a safe search on and they're trying to get around it. So they're just doing the most generic, like women lifting heavy packages.
Exactly. Like he could not search his safe search or his like Covenant Eyes or whatever would not let him search lesbians kissing.
No. Yeah.
It had to be ladies and girls.
He couldn't do like just lesbian porn or like lesbian sex scene. He had to just do like, well, maybe I'll get around my safe search if I do people who happen to have low cut blouses on in public.
you know, the people with the bathroom with the dress.
People who typically wear dresses and that have long hair.
If you walk into a Cracker Barrel, they're the one that it says hens over their bathroom.
That's such a deep cut. Hens.
It's a very stupid cut.
Oh my God. Yeah. Brian Houston, just for the record, just so everyone knows where we land with Brian Houston, is an absolute fucking idiot. So
he's a piece of crap.
Total piece of crap. I don't care about him. Yep. Please email me and tell me why I should change my mind. But
yeah, he enabled his pedophile father.
Yeah. So have fun at your Hillsong concerts, everyone. If you want to go to Hillsong, have fun. Just remember what Brian Houston did at 11:41 Australian time.
Remember, his dad founded that church, and then he took it over and protected his dad. So, and then late at night, when you're having your Bible study, Brian Houston is accidentally opening up Twitter instead of Google and typing in ladies and girls kissing.
Ladies and girls kissing. I'm just surprised that he is going to. I know he'll bounce back from this cockroach. He will somehow rise from this and have some big old church gathering once again. Who knows? But
I am a little bit scared that if ever that this is such an earworm of a moment for me, that if I'm ever to address a crowd, instead of ladies and gentlemen, I might slip up and go ladies and girls.
Ladies and girls.
Ladies and girls, gentlemen. Sorry.
And gentlemen and boys.
Which would be equally as embarrassing, obviously.
I think we need to just go back through Brian Houston's records during, like, as he's introducing church and see if he has done that himself. Maybe he has been on a Sunday
Ladies
morning.
and girls.
Ladies and girls. Cockney accent for the Australian.
Strips on the barbie and drop bears.
God. Well, what are we talking about today? I mean, what's our actual main topic? Let's get away from Brian Houston.
Yeah, let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's talk life. Let's talk Bible.
Yeah,
Let's talk
let's just
theology.
have some life on life.
Let's light up our cigars by the leather-bound chairs.
That's right.
In a cigar room in Louisville, Kentucky, and let's talk about Calvinism.
We both lived that moment. You realize what you.
Yeah, no, I brought back a sense memory. So for the next couple episodes, we're going to be diving into each of the tenets of Calvinism. So what Calvinism is it is the overall doctrine that describes how salvation occurs and everything surrounding it. It kind of expands beyond just a little bit of that, actually, and talks about like, okay, how far does God's grace extend?
Yeah. It's like a framework for peace, like trying to piece together salvation, like just the whole process of, because it really is a gigantic topic if you think about it. It's like one of the biggest things you can try to answer as a Christian is like, why do we need to get saved? Because what's funny is like once you start diving into that question, things don't really make a lot of sense. Like if you try to explain yourself of like, why did God need to, save us? And you go, well, because we were bad. Well, why we were bad? Well, we were just, I guess, born that way. Or is it only when you actually sin first? And
why did Jesus have to die though? Well, because there needed to be a sacrifice. But
but why?
Why?
Yeah, like there's so many whys of like salvation. Like why did he have to die? Why did he have to get raised again? Why did he have to ascend? Why did people have to accept? Like, how do you accept salvation? Is it free to you? Do you have to return something to God? There's all these questions that.
You do have to return old library books in order to get saved.
It's free grace, but you do have to make sure, you be kind and rewind.
To your local library.
God has a very big stake in local library health across the nation.
But the developed acronym for the different tenets of Calvinism can be best understood as TULIP.
Yeah.
And it's just the five different tenets of Calvinism. The T, which we will talk about today, is total depravity.
Woo!
Total depravity dives in. What that is that man is innately bad, is inherently bad, and inherently sinful, and is in a state of inherent rebellion against God that is not correctable by his own nature.
Yeah.
Thereby, man on his own cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. He cannot do anything to get to the kingdom of heaven. It is only by grace and grace alone, which we get to later, that man is able to walk through those pearly gates.
Yep. This very first letter of the acrostic is to set the scene of like why everything else has to fall in place. And it's because, we have absolutely zero ability to correct our situation. And it's a way to like describe. And it already like I feel like the wheels kind of fall off with this because there's other questions you can ask that I think on paper tulip makes sense and that's why people like it.
Yeah.
But in real life and in conversation, it makes not a lot of sense.
Well, and I think total depravity from like a,
yeah, dive in. Tell me.
From like a realist standpoint, like total depravity is the most relatable out of each one. Like you can get somebody in with total depravity because like, you see how everything in the world is shit. And it's like, it was like, well, back in the day, 2 people in a garden and one of them ate an apple. So like it's the other thing about total depravity is it can extend back to that time in Genesis where, it's far reaching. Like, before, Adam didn't have to work for anything. He just picked up food. I've always joked that like just big old T-bone steaks grew on trees back then. But like
it's just the Flintstones every day out there.
Exactly. But like the Garden of Eden was purely perfect in that he didn't really have to do anything. But then, when sin was brought into the world, all of a sudden you had to start working.
Yeah.
So you can blame sin, blame taxes on sin. Pain during childbirth is another part of total depravity. It's far-reaching because sin, and that's the whole thing, is that sin entered the world and brought cracks into God's perfect creation, and it's widespread. I think the real hiccup for me on total depravity is it is by no means of your own. Like you are born at a net negative of infinity. That's the whole deal.
Yep.
And where Calvinists have problems is any sort of age of accountability conversation.
I just would say that is the number one, at least in my opinion, opposition to the T is the age of accountability. Because, and here's a little personal anecdote, is I was interning at a church in Texas in college, and it was a Southern Baptist church, and the pastor was very like classic, just theology bro, kind of like really into Calvinism. And I remember we were like kind of studying Tulip that summer.
Had a nice Hitler Youth haircut as well.
Yeah. He was bald, so pretty close.
Oh, well,
by choice too. So it's bold choice. But we talked about total depravity. And I remember asking him because he had kids. It's probably dark to ask him, but I was being serious. I was like, "What do you think about your kids like right now?" Because I remember he had, I think, 3 kids at the time. One was like maybe 10.
What do you think about your kids right now? Like, who's your favorite?
Yeah, who's your favorite? just curious. They're not definitely listening in the other room. I'm just doing it on their half.
Do you think Billy's going to hell?
Yeah, but it's like, but he had like a 10-year-old and like maybe like a 7-year-old who already were jumping through the hoops of like they were going to church and they accepted Christ at like kindergarten. But he had like a 3-year-old at the time that was at, and I remember going like, what do you think about your youngest? Like, do you really think she will, like, if she died today in like a horrific accident, like, would she just go to hell? Or is there like room for her? I remember him being like, not even thinking about it. He was like, yeah, she would go to hell because we're born into sin. And I was like, so that little thing over there, and like playing with Barbies in the corner, like gets hit by a car today, hell for eternity, like no redemption whatsoever. And he's like, yeah, like that's
absolutely,
that's where the beauty of God's grace is. None of us deserve it. But that just never sat well with me. And I think most people would agree, like that just doesn't feel right. Like as a God of the entire universe, he can't like balance the scales a little bit. That just, I don't get it. Like it's always seemed
well, and that means it's on you. Like it's on you to do your part of being that, parent that ministers to your kids, being a missionary that spreads the gospel to places that haven't had it before. Because if they like, how many generations are in hell right now because nobody ever brought the good news of God to them? even though
it really is an evangelism tool. Cause like you're told if no one else hears about it, they're going to go to hell. There's no room. Like people in other countries, whatever, children are going to hell. Like it's scary. It's horrifying to think that everybody else that doesn't have it is going to hell. Total depravity. Like, and the other point too is, it doesn't necessarily mean that like we are born as the worst version of ourselves or anything like that. It's more that like everything we do is just affected by sin. So it's like you can't even like, even if you have like a good intentions, like anything. It's like I could, if I wanted to start a nonprofit and I was an atheist, it would still be evil because I'm not doing it for the glory of God. I'm not doing it as a redeemed person. So like it really sets a huge line in the sand I'm having some therapy moment right now because it's like, what it does is it really separates the world where it's like there's good guys and bad guys. There's people who are saved, and then there's everybody else. And it's like, even if it's a wonderful nonprofit doing great work, it's not a Christian one. So
I remember having the conversation in church one time because, like, total depravity seeks so hard into a lot of our conversations about non-believers. And one of them was that people who don't believe in God could not actually love.
Oof. That was said all the time in my church. Yeah.
Yeah. People who were Christians could love. They could love, they could have a marriage, or they could, love people and everything like that. And which is also another funny thing of like, well, these people outside of the church, or these people who do not believe in what we believe, they can't experience real love. We will take their money to do the wedding ceremony by all means.
Yeah.
Unless it's dude and dude or girl and girl. That's out of the question.
Then they're out of here. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so interesting to think about. Yeah. It's like that you could accept money from others, but ultimately think like they're not doing it correctly, or they're not doing it the right way. I was told that all the time that like, marriage is built on Christ. You were told you weren't doing it
the right way all the time?
Yeah. Everything I did was wrong. Stop doing it.
Scott, you're not doing that the right way.
It's like, they always said that only Christian marriages had true like love at the center. Like every other, if it's not a Christian marriage, that it's just built on, not like built on lies, but like, it was just like, they weren't experiencing true love. It was always like the true, like peace, the true, it's like, oh, they could find some peace through that, but not true peace or whatever it is. It's always like this.
They could find the peace that God allows them to find.
Yeah. Gosh.
And that's the other thing is that, and common grace is probably the biggest thing that I have a problem with in all of Christianity. Is so you have different types
what's
of
common
grace.
Give us a quick refresher.
Common grace is, I mean, if you just go to like, the first route in Pokemon, Grace is going to be the most popular Pokemon that pops out. Sorry, that was a dumbass joke.
Jesus Christ
common grace
Almighty.
Is actually what it actually is.
Good Lord, that was serious. Just horrible.
I suck. Oh man.
I like that you knew where that was going and you kind of begrudgingly served that dish cold to me and the listeners.
I was like, man, I feel like you expect me to do this, and so I will. No. But common grace is, in a more serious note, so everything you have around you is due to God's grace. God's grace, God's saving grace, or anything like that. Things I don't know what the other term outside of common grace is grace that's given for salvation.
Yeah. The irresistible grace. Yeah.
Yeah, irresistible grace, stuff like that. But common grace is just like air.
Yeah.
That you are allowed to breathe, but it's extended to everybody.
And so God is gracious even towards people he is sending to hell for allowing them to live and breathe and be good and do good things and experience happiness while they're here on this earth.
It is, you're 100% right.
And he
that's
is,
wild.
make no mistake, when we get to L, I think, when we get to limited atonement, he is sending people to hell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we'll get to the L later, but yeah, God already chose who's going to get saved and who did. That's part of Calvinism, is that it explains why.
No, he looked through the window of time, saw who was going to be good, and based off of that, did it. There's always that, like, look through the window. Oh, yeah.
There's always a loophole of, like, he didn't choose. He just, like, identified the people who were going to love him, and they just happen to be white Anglo-Saxon Christian
This is why
people.
I hate John Piper with every fiber of my being. But at the very least, John Piper, like, sticks to his guns on this, and it's just like, no, yeah, he's sending people to hell.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it really, like, no one wants to say it. They wanted to say, like, well, it's really just because people... Because you keep going farther back, and it's like, okay, let's say there is whatever limited atonement, or that there is total depravity. Like, at some point, God still started this whole thing in motion. Like,
yeah,
and so then you have to decide. And I really do think a lot of the problems with the Bible, like, boil down to the two questions of, is God all powerful or is he all loving? Like, those are the two categories where it's like, he's sending people to hell in some way, shape, or form. However you want to slice or dice it, like, people are going to go to hell on God's watch.
Yeah.
And you have to explain that either that God's not powerful enough to stop that, or that he's not loving enough to care about it. Like, he's just, well, that's just the way it is, and that's, how it goes, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Total depravity.
Yeah, total depravity. We all deserve hell. By God's grace, some of us don't have to go.
Yeah, just some people in certain countries that listen to certain church sermons and music and podcasts. Yeah. Are there any verses that stand out to you that kind of describe total depravity? I know there's a few, as I'm doing a little bit of research here, that stand out.
There's the filthy rags one that describes all of our righteous acts are like filthy rags. And filthy rags is, it's not just like a dirty rag. It's
tampons.
What I was told is tampons, basically. And so that's what Isaiah is referring to. Just basically saying that everything any good deed that we do is useless without God. And another way to describe total depravity is, like, we are fully and irreparably tainted by sin. To walk in God's presence would be an insult to God. That's why Jesus came and died, was to take on that sin, to take it away from us, so that when he looks at us, this is fucked up. When God looks at us, he sees his children. He doesn't see those sinful, horrible people anymore.
Right.
Now, you also have to reconcile that with God is Jesus, and say that Jesus was doing it all along, and that God wanted those people to be that way. And so he killed his son. Mm-hmm. So
I'm
that
following 100% right now. Yep.
I know, like, it's such a.
I was a pastor. Weird, this is all easy to me.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
of course, that makes sense.
Anybody who didn't grow up in this is just like, these are two madmen talking in circles. But anybody who grew up with this is like, yeah, this makes.
Of course, it is.
This.
Of course, God is Jesus, and Jesus had to die.
And
but
that's the other wild thing about all this is the Jesus dying part.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you wanted people to go into heaven, why'd you have to kill your son? Well, because there needed to be a sacrifice. Well, why did there need to be a sacrifice? Well, God required a sacrifice for sin. So God set up the system for
I can see the red yarn spinning around the push pins. Right
yeah, like he set up the system for collecting sacrifices for sin, and we're supposed to be upset that he killed his own son due to the system he created.
My favorite thing is that for thousands of years, you could even get away with maybe just hundreds, but thousands of years, there was no reference book. There was no Bible put together. No. People think that they always had a Bible just laying around. They could go, is this sin? Is this bad? Think about like if truly the book of the law of Moses and all the other laws were God's standard of righteousness. How many people ate shrimp and pork for hundreds of years before that and had no idea?
And like, ate ass too.
Yeah, and ate It's like God.
They don't talk about that enough.
He set this whole system up, and how were people supposed to know? Like, were they just supposed to just know that eating pork was sinful, or that like working on a certain day would have been, or was it only at that once he enacted those laws, then it was righteousness? And that's when but then it claims like, well, God's law is temperamental in that situation. Like if his law is truly eternal, eating pork would have been bad all the time, not just once he gave people the book of the law of Moses. But anyway, we're too admin just spinning down this hole. But.
Jesus coming in because he comes in and he says, I'm here to fulfill the law.
Yeah.
Which also there's
a blanket statement. Yeah.
It's a blanket statement. And it also feels like you're changing the rules.
Yeah. It's a little lazy lazy writing.
It's lazy writing. Second season, they kind of went off the rails. But I mean, you're right. Like for a while there, no one really knew what to do. That's like one of my kind of odd beefs with circumcision is that everything else is like detailed out in the Bible about what to do. And it's just like, do this way. If, a woman grabs your, if somebody's woman grabs your husband's junk.
Boo-boo. Oh.
Yeah. Slice off her head.
If you bump hoo-hoos with someone's boo-boo, you're getting in a lot of trouble.
You're going to be in deep poo-poo.
Thank you.
But as far as all of those are outlined, how to adorn the tabernacle is outlined, how to do offerings is outlined. In Genesis, God's just like, circumcise your son. And Abraham's like, got it. Know what that means.
No problem. Yeah, I know exactly what that is.
Absolutely got it. And so we can't treat each book equally in what they are presenting us. To a further point of what we're talking about, where it's like, well, we didn't have all these all together all at once. The only reason we have all of them together all at once was Constantine's mom was a Christian, and he was like, well, mom's a Christian, and I don't want to make her sad.
Yeah.
And so he converted himself to Christianity, and then found out how many different groups of Christianity were running around.
He was like, oh, crap. I thought there was like two of them.
He was like, Jesus. And so
Literally.
he just like, he's like, you. And according to history, he just got them all together and was just like, just give me one book that we can use, or else I kill all of you. Like, that's because I'm the emperor of
Rome. The formation of the Bible in itself is chaos, but for John Calvin, he was sitting around, and I don't know when he was like the most famous. When was he around? 16th century? Sounds about right? Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know. 15th, 16th century?
We know history. Let's Google John Calvin.
Either way, thousands of years removed from the formation of not thousands, but
John Calvin is an American film and television actor.
That's him. That's him, yeah. He's an actor.
1500s.
Okay.
In Picardy, France.
Bacardi, France?
Bacardi.
Bacardi. And Coke, France.
Picardy, and
Captain Picard.
Yeah. And he died in Geneva.
Huh. Do we know what he died from? Is it really embarrassing? He shit his pants to death?
There's controversies. Jesus, somebody who was walking around in the 16th century had controversies. Color me shocked.
Do you think John Calvin's in hell or heaven, based on all of his research?
The death section is last illness.
Oh, last illness. Okay.
Last illness.
Just a shitty way to die. He just had his cold.
Yeah, he had so many illnesses before, and
The last illness.
The last one finally got him.
He's had a really bad hangnail.
Oh my god. So it looks like he got better.
Oh.
Shortly after he recovered, he strained his voice while preaching, which brought on a violent fit of coughing. He burst a blood vessel in his lungs.
Jeez.
And he steadily declined. So he died from preaching is the...
Wow. What a way to go. What a poetic way to go for John Calvin. He caused all sorts of problems after that.
Died doing what he loved.
Yeah. So, total depravity. Unfortunately, it was a tenet that I backed up during my pastoral years. I think I would have agreed that.
Yeah. I mean, we're kind of like giving listeners a peek behind the curtain. Were you 2 point, 3 point, 4 point, 5 point Calvinist?
Let's see. Total depravity, I was fine with, but actually, now I'm thinking about it, I always had room for like an age of accountability. I always thought like,
yeah.
Because the other thing that did make sense to me is people would always give a hard date for accountability. They'll be like, well, it's 12 or it's 13. I'm like, well, what about people with like learning disabilities or people that have like mental barriers? Like some people have the mind of an 8-year-old and they're 30. Like, do they have room? Like, do they get to, those are the legit questions I always had was like, can people make a decision later because they haven't developed enough? Like, or what if someone is like, I don't know, just fully in it and like, yeah, they're 6 years old and they accept Christ. Are they, do they have the wherewithal to understand their decision? So I was a little iffy on like accountability stuff, but I did agree that but outside of Christ, you couldn't do anything good. Like I would have backed up the thought that there's like a better love out there, like a true goodness, and that's only with Christ as your motivation. What about you? Like with total depravity, like do you feel like same boat or were you pretty hardline?
I think I gave exception to any sort of. I think ultimately I enshrouded my answer in I don't know.
Yeah.
Which I feel like
that is the old ace in the hole as a pastor is you can just say I don't know and people will be like, he's so deep. He's such a people person.
He's so wise for saying I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would do for age of accountability. I never really subscribed to it. I would say I don't know. I would say I believe that God's grace extends. It extends out where He wants it to. And so if somebody is gone before they can make that decision, then I think that He's, I think at that point you have to think about the character of God. And is this the kind of God that would send those? Which goes back to how fucked up what your Texas pastor said.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of and that's the kind of environment I grew up in. Was like, it was hard line. Like, if you don't accept Christ,
God is so uncaring and is so by the book. It's just like, sorry, according to the rules I made up.
That brings up a really good point, though. Like, I feel like people take Calvinism, this like just set of ideas, and they want to make things fit into that framework. Like that's the measuring stick.
Have you ever heard the term like cage Calvinist?
I don't know.
It might have just been like some buddies of mine came up with, but it's the idea. If somebody's a cage Calvinist, they should be locked in a cage for a year, so that they develop a feeling to relate to other people.
Yeah, yeah. It's the least relatable system of thinking as Calvinism, because you are just it's an explanation of,
hey, let's talk about how people are shit and you don't deserve anything.
it really is. It's just like this explanation of like why certain people get elected and others don't, and I know more than you. Mentality.
I'm obviously part of the elect, and I'm part of the elect, and you're also part of the elect, but your friend might not be. But you need to tell them about Jesus anyway, just in case they might be.
And we all have like the same relationship to God, but I have a little bit more special relationship with God because I studied more John Calvin.
Because I read R.C. Sproul.
Yeah, so I kind of know God a little bit more though. So
I read John Calvin, and I actually have I have a book signed by John Piper, and
you sound like me in 2010.
No, I sound like me in 2011.
Just right behind me.
let's get it straight.
Yeah.
Total depravity is totally depraved.
It's dumb. I'm a little ashamed that it was something that was a driving factor for me in ministry for a bit.
Because I remember walking around and thinking, it wasn't look at all these sinners. Like that wasn't what I was thinking. It was just like I would be walking around and I'd be like, man, everybody out here is just poisoned by sin.
Yeah. It makes you like feel like you're living in the Matrix, and you have that's how I kind of legit felt, was like, I have a special mission that is secret and no one else knows about it. But
nobody knows what reality is actually like.
I know what the real reality is. I took the red pill, or the blue pill, or the red one, the good one. I took the pill that makes things real.
The pill that makes the movie happen.
There's like the pill that you can take if you want to be like the guy that kind of looks like a mouse and eats like the steak, and he kind of doesn't care, or you can be like the cool guy that does karate.
Yeah,
I did the karate one.
I did the karate one, and now I'm walking around, and everybody has sin in their hearts, and I have to karate them into salvation.
I have to karate them out of their battery cell packs with the liquid goo so they can accept Christ. That's their goo savior battery pack life support.
This is an actual excerpt from Scott's journal in 2011.
God help me release all these people from their goo battery packs.
Any final thoughts on total depravity?
I just think I'm going to say probably the same thing for all these letters, is that the framework sounds great on paper, and it's great for theology bros to just sit around with their stupid little like wool ties and wood pipes and try to talk about how they understand how the Bible works. But at the end of the day, you're trying to explain a lore that doesn't really tie up all the loose ends.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to like write an addition to the Bible that it will never work, because the source material itself doesn't make sense. It just doesn't fit together. And so someone like John Calvin tried to make it work, and the way of making it work is to be out of touch with the reality and to have a hardline stance on things that, I don't know, it really just doesn't hold up. Like, you start asking questions about any of these tenets, and you are like, it took us maybe 2 questions to go, like, maybe this doesn't make sense. So I don't know, total depravity, more like total shit gravity. Evan, please go.
You're totally right. We went into this, and I said it at the beginning, and I still believe it. Total depravity, I think, is the one that everybody might be able to like get a little bit on board with, and like, okay, yeah, there must be a reason that the world's shit.
Yeah,
that you can meet somewhere in the middle on that. It's just the external tenets and what that means with a heaven, with a Jesus who died on the cross. That's where total depravity is. That's where it gets a lot more complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. Trying to fit all the pieces together is where, funny enough, it's like they made this framework to try to make everything fit.
Yeah, but it's a glorified 5-point sermon.
It is. Yeah,
that's what it is, and you built out these different tenets to talk through this one aspect, and the problem is that aspect contradicts itself constantly.
And you can find verses to contradict these. It's not like you can just. It's not like we're just talking out of our ass, like, oh, like these guys haven't read the Bible. Like, you can find verses that will say one or the other. Like, that's the. I won't say the beauty of the Bible, but that is the scary part of the Bible is that two people can read the same verse and have totally different takeaways. Like, someone could read a verse like John 3:16 even and go, "See, God loves everyone. Like, why would everyone be totally apart from God?
God loved the world,
and by His creation.
He's saying that, and so He gave His only begotten Son, so that whoever believed in Him." Which would be whoever would believe in Him.
Yeah, it wasn't an open invitation. It's just that those that were going to believe would. It's just.
Which we didn't even get to the aspect of total depravity actually meaning a damn thing when Jesus was around. Like before, what was everybody just going to hell? Or did Jesus dying just send a lot of people to hell automatically? Like was Satan just like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
we don't have enough employees to deal with all this processing.
And that's, I mean, we'll maybe another episode too, but they try to explain why Jesus did die. And some people say it's because he had to go to hell to win back people who were asleep and were actually, saints at the time, but they were just dead. And he had to save them from hell and then bring them back with him there's all sorts of ways.
How miserable is that? Hey, wake up. You got to go to heaven. I'm taking a nap.
I've been sleeping for 400 years. I'm tired.
I was in the desert. Do you know how much I've been wanting sleep?
Oh, God. Yeah. 4 more letters we get through. So buckle up, listener. There's lots more to come.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. You can find us on unblessedpodcast.com, at unblessedpod, at any social media outlet that you might find, except the sexy ones.
And True Social.
Scott's working on it.
We're working on that every day and night.
Yeah. But thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And once again, my name is Evan.
And I'm Scott.
And don't forget about hell.